Expansion teams are something that have been around for a very long time and something that a lot of people wish would be more consistently brought into leagues and organizations. I'm sure if you bring in an expansion team into some of these bigger cities in some bigger leagues, such as the NBA or the NFL, which are the most common people that are talked about, you probably bring in new fans, whether it's people that become fans because they're already in the city, or just they see an opportunity to enter with a new team and enter a league that they maybe don't fully understand, but they can join with a new team instead of being a bandwagon for somebody else that's already in the league. But here's the thing that maybe everyone doesn't understand about expansion teams. It is very tough to be an expansion team and to prosper in those early years. Sometimes it takes 5 years, 10 years, 15 years before you're even in a playoff race in some of these leagues. So, this is your first time on the channel. My name is John. This is the Sports Advocate. If you like this content, I have content like this pretty much daily. Give me a like, give me a dislike. Go ahead and subscribe if you like this because it's really appreciated and it is always noticed for me, especially with how small I am at this moment. And comment down below who you think. I don't know how to word this. Comment down below who your newest favorite team is. Even if you didn't start right when they started. But I want to kind of get an idea of how many people, when they become a fan of a team, is it a team that's been in the league forever, or are you joining on a newer team? I think that's interesting. But this video is the fourth part of a series I did quite a few weeks ago about the Vegas Inaugural season and how well they've done since they've joined. As you know, or if you don't know, they've been in the NHL for 5 years and they had an incredible start, one that we've really never ever seen before. So quickly, let's go ahead and cover the Vegas first season and kind of things that have happened since. I know I covered in the previous video, but just for context, Vegas Golden Knights went 51, 24, and 7 in their first season, number 5 in the league with 109 points. That is the highest wins and highest points and highest position in the NHL for a first-year team, and there's really no one that's even close. The only modern era team in all American sports, MLB, NHL, NBA, NFL, to make playoffs in the first year. To make playoffs. Like, that's incredible. But the thing is, they didn't just make the playoffs. The Vegas Golden Knights made a run all the way to the championship round, the Stanley Cup Finals. They ended up losing, but the fact that they were the first team ever in the modern era to make the playoffs, and they made a run all the way, that's incredible. But if you haven't watched those videos, I'll have that pop up. It's a playlist. I'll probably have it pop up in the end cards also. And I'll probably see if I can pop it up in the I assume I can if it is a playlist, or I'll have just the first video of it pop up there. But I would highly recommend you go check out those videos. I went very, very in depth. It's one of my favorite stories all time for sports. But let me explain to you why it is so tough and why the Vegas Golden Knights were so special in their expansion year and even since then. So let's start with the previous NHL expansion team records. Let's stay in the NHL to start with. First off, for most points, we have the Panthers with 19 Florida Panthers. In 1993 was their expansion year. They had 83 points. That was the previous record. Now it's at 109 because of Vegas. For wins, it was again the Florida Panthers in 1993 with 33 wins. That was the previous record before Vegas, who has 51 in their first year. 33 wins. Now, if you don't know, there's 82 games in a year. So 33, 42 is half of that. 33 is well below halfway, well below 500. The worst record ever in the NHL for an expansion team is the Ottawa Senators in 1992 with a 10-70-4 record. Only 10 wins in their first season. And this wasn't long ago, 20 or so years, 30. That train is really loud, and I can hear it in the mic, so sorry about that. Average wins for an expansion team in the NHL based on all of the last 10. So how this kind of works, how I did it for the rest of the way, is I only count it as expansion team if they weren't a team in another league, and that will be important because the NFL and a little bit of the NBA. But the NFL, a lot of times with the AFL joining with the NFL, there was, like, the Browns won their technical first year in the NFL, but they were a professional team for many years prior to that in the AFL. So that's what modern era means. It's a literal, like, a actual brand new team that is just being started. Okay. Average wins is 22.25 in the NHL for an expansion team. Average points is 55. So you're looking at half of the averages for what Vegas did, so they doubled it. The only NHL team to have a winning record in their expansion year, well before the modern era, is the Pittsburgh Pirates. Yes, Pirates. I know that is an MLB team now, but originally they had an NHL team called the Pittsburgh Pirates. They ended up shutting down the team and the organization during the Great Depression, the 30s, and all that stuff. But nonetheless, the Pittsburgh Pirates in 1925 had a winning record of 19-16-1. Obviously, the schedule was a lot shorter, but 19-16-1, only 3 more wins than losses. And if you count the one tie, because the one at the end isn't an overtime loss, it's a tie for them back then because they didn't do all that stuff. But now let's talk about other expansion teams in other leagues and the best overall one. Now, I will tell you, I could not find the best NBA expansion first year team, because every time I'd Google it, it'd pop up who are the best expansion teams in the NBA, and they'd be like, well, the Bucks are number one because they won it very quickly after becoming an expansion team, and the Heat did super good, and it was like going based on how well they have done since their first year on, instead of how well they did in their first year. I actually couldn't find it. If you know what it is, who the worst or who the best NBA team in their first season record-wise was, go and comment that down below. I would very much appreciate that, and that you'll help anyone that is watching this video at a later time have the answer to that. But for the NFL, it was the Panthers in 1995 with a 7-9 record, again, right below 500, but still quite a good record. Next up, the MLB, the LA Angels in 1961 had a 70-91 record, again, well below 500. Okay, now, since I couldn't find the NBA, and we're only going based on American leagues and all that stuff, so you're not including soccer or any other form of sport in a different area of the world, because I'm not going to be able to list every single different version of sports. The fastest championships per league of the American leagues, we're going to go through that. So, firstly, in the NHL, the Flyers, and when I say championships, I mean their inaugural season until the first time that they won a championship. Not the first time they arrived in it, because Vegas would be the fastest to arrive at the finals, but to actually win it. So we have the Flyers. They did it in 7 years after their season. Okay, 7 years, that's pretty good. The MLB, the Diamondbacks, did it in 3 years, baseball. Okay. Bucks in the NBA did it in 3 years, and the Giants did it in 3 years. So, one thing that almost makes the Vegas season even better is the fact that the previous fastest to win a championship was the Flyers in 7 years, and the fact that Vegas made it to the finals in the very first year. Now, obviously, they're already in year 5, so they would have to win it this year or next year to beat the record of that. But, again, I don't think there's a single NHL team that made it to the finals in less time than 7 years. So, that's pretty good. And maybe the Flyers might have made it the year prior. I'm not exactly sure. But that just proves how truly special Vegas' season was. Not only is it better than every other sport, but the next closest in its own sport, the NHL, was 7 years. So that just truly shows how incredible that first season was for Vegas. Now, why was it so special? How were they able to pull it off? Well, there's a few reasons. For one, not only was yeah, of course it was their first year, but a lot of times in this first year, in other leagues and stuff like that, you have a lot bigger of a roster and you're not using as many people, so you're able to put people that are still very good, or maybe they're young, or things like that, into the expansion draft, or maybe you get a couple more picks in the normal draft and stuff like that. But in the NHL, pretty much every player on the roster is getting used because you have 4 lines, so you're giving out like somebody that just really is too old, you don't think is capable of it, or just hasn't put up the numbers to the point where they're way down on the 4th line or 3rd line and they're getting put in the expansion draft. So the fact that Vegas was able to do this in, I'd say, baseball or the NHL is the hardest expansion teams. But I mean, look at the MLB. They had 3 years and somebody won the championship, the Diamondbacks. So the fact that I would argue that NHL has the most difficult route to becoming a good team after being expansion, and Vegas was able to immediately become one of the better teams, top teams in the league. That's very special. And a big help, as we talked about in the previous videos, which you should go check out. Goalie Marc-Andre Fleury just won a Stanley Cup the year prior, and obviously was good enough because he won the Vezina when he was on the Knights. And you also bring in coaches. And yes, I understand that the first coach was fired, and there's a lot of fans talking about firing DeBoer right now. But you brought in coaches who already showed how much worth they had. Yes, they got released from their prior job, but they were very, very good for the most part when they did have the job, and then they were brought over here. Whereas in other leagues, if you are able to play at a top level, bring your team to a top level as a coach, you likely, for one, are getting fired. It takes a lot to get fired. I mean, Doc Rivers just got fired, and now look, he's on the 76ers, and they're doing well. So it takes a lot to get fired in other leagues. And when you do get fired, even if you've been doing poorly and struggling in playoffs or things like that, for example, Doc Rivers, you still get scooped up right away to a new team. And that goes for most sports. I mean, and another thing, a lot of different sports have a lot of specific coaches, especially the NFL. Perfect example is the NFL. Head coach, assistant coach, and then you have position coaches and all this stuff. The MLB has a bunch of different coaches. The NBA, you have a less amount of coaches. It's more of like 2 coaches and then the health staff, whatever you would like to refer to them as, and then your general manager. And the NHL is kind of in the middle ground. You got like your head coach, your assistant coach, and then you have like a goalie coach and stuff like that. So you have quite a good amount of coaches, but it's nothing like in the NFL where you're seeing defensive coaches have one good year and then get pulled to a head coach gig. I mean, there's always coaches that are very, very good in the NFL, and they're able to get moved like quickly just with one good year and show good promise. Coach Staley of the Chargers, my team, went from college to the Rams defense to the Chargers head coach, had a positive record with the Chargers, and there's a lot of hope right now for a lot more progress. And he did that in a very, very short amount of time. So there's always new coaches. Whereas in the NHL, it seems like it's almost harder to find that really good coach. And normally if a coach were to get removed from position, again, with the NBA, a good example to compare to the NHL is a coach that is very good but maybe struggles in a certain category will get scooped back up again. But Vegas found a way to have good coaches. in their first year and the years since. So there's a lot of reasons why Vegas was able to do good. They built a roster well. They got good coaches. They really brought everyone together, and maybe the city that it was built in had a lot to do with it also, because everyone kind of came around right away. I think they sold all their season tickets in that first year, and I'm sure that's going to bring a lot to a team and make them very excited and be like, hey, we have support already. But again, like I just showed you a couple minutes ago, this is a huge outlier. This is not something that happens consistently. I mean, the worst record was 10-70-4 for the NHL. The best record with wins was 33. Seattle, who is in their inaugural season this year. Now, the season's not over. Let that be known. But so they are more recent than Vegas, and you'd think if it's because the new version of expansion team allows you to be so much better so much sooner, that Seattle will be having just as great of a season to be in the playoff contention and all that stuff. But we go to standings over here, and like I said, the season's not over. Seattle, 9th in the Western Conference. And again, Vegas was 5th in the entire league in their first year. Seattle's 9th in the Western Conference, has 26 wins, 44 losses, and 6 overtime losses. So already have nearly double the amount of losses as Vegas did in their first year. And in the entire league, Seattle sits at 30th, right at the bottom, which is probably what you'd expect with an expansion team. So I think it's important to not only notice how important and great of a season start to a franchise and all that stuff that Vegas has done, but to not expect this to continue to occur. And I think that's the biggest point to come across of Vegas. Vegas found something special. They did a lot of great work with it, and they continue to work well with it. But this is not something that is normal. Okay, and that's it. No more ranting. I think I've explained myself good with statistics, with points of emotion, and with like a good description. So if you like the video, which if you stayed this long, I would assume you do, why don't you go check out my other videos? I'm probably going to have my end card be the playlist where this video is in for anyone that maybe wants to go back and revisit those or watch those, because I guess technically you could watch this video without watching those. Go and subscribe if you do like this video, and maybe go check out another video, because I would very much appreciate that. All of my subscribers are definitely noticed and appreciated. If you comment on my videos, I would say if there's a way for me to respond, 90% of the time I'm going to respond. Sometimes if it's just like a really basic comment, there's not much room for me to respond, but if I see you, I will most likely respond. So I do appreciate any comments. And I appreciate criticisms of how to improve, because I really want to improve. Give me a like, give me a dislike, because that is good information. And that's it. No need to rant. So, as always, I hope I taught you something. I hope it made you smile. I hope it made you laugh. That's something that's really important to me, affecting someone else's day. And lastly, as always, you guys all be safe out there.